real pleasure to be back here. I am very opposed to Moore method as it is described in the book. That's why for a long time I stayed away, but then I realized that IBL is much more human in any ways. Anyhow, I was at one of these conferences 8 years ago, and I missed the community. I've been pretty alone, and already the first few hours today was a great experience, and I feel much, much nicer. What I'd like to talk about is about my math circle at Arizona State University, and I feel I'm really privileged of having that group of students around, and I can do things which are totally different from what you have to do in the classrooms, like what we just heard when we are talking to disenfranchised students, and we have to get to a certain thing, and we have grades at the end. I don't have to worry about any grades. We are just doing discovery, learning math at the best. But it's, for us, a great playground where we actually can test methods, and at the very end, what we take out of what we do in the evening, it actually influences what we do in the classroom. And so that's what I'd like to talk about. So basically, I realized just when preparing the slides that I wasn't sure how many of you are familiar with math circles, so I decided to actually put a few slides in there and say a few words about that, about the history, then say about some of the decisions why we are doing something elitist like what we are doing at ASU, and then I had promised that I make you walk through a math circle, but at the very end, I wasn't sure how many people there were and how big the tables were, and I just was too scared. But at the very end, I brought something along, and at least some of the toys which I have at the math festival are lying on the table. What is bad is you're not like students. The students would have already played with this one all the time. And so I like working with students and kids. The younger they are, at the festivals, they would never have anything like that lying around, and they just jump around and mathematical questions arise. And then I'm gonna basically just show you pictures and give you some ideas of the topics that we cover and how we work through them. And I think the pictures are actually the most telling as you see what the students are doing. My personal background, I'm from control theory. I've been 25 years at ASU, and I have taught well over 30 classes. It's simply that I have nobody in my area, so I get to do whatever I want. Every year I try something else. And so I'm trying, I know about IBL and I love it, but it takes a long time to try something. And so this spring it didn't work in complex analysis. A year ago in topology it was a joke. The year before in abstract algebra we did quite a bit of that. So going up and down in the fall, I'm again assigned a graduate course in differential equations, and all the materials, they're not gonna fly for me. It just doesn't work. But I'm constantly trying to see how it works. Actually, IBL, I learned this one in the early 90s. We had a huge project funded by the NSF on the size of $30 million plus a one-to-one match on having integrated curricula where it was just in time delivery of mathematics and physics for engineering projects. And we were learning everything on the jobs, and the students actually were the ones who are driving the delivery of the math and the physics coming in. And that's where my background came from. So many of the things that I'm seeing here, I said, yeah, we saw this one, and it came up this morning, that the scientists are very often ahead of us, and I've spent much time working with the chemists and the physicists and the engineers, and they have a very different structure in their curricula. Working with black boxes is no problem for them, and you just work with these things, and you don't always have to prove everything. I spend half my time on teaching learning conferences and the other half for research, and so I'm always afraid when I walk into a new audience in here, but I'm happy to see a few of you. A few things. I said I'm absolutely against the Moore method as it is described in the book, and so I probably learned it the wrong way. I can't imagine that you cannot talk to other students, because the most important thing, mathematics is a social enterprise, so I owe it to my students that they can work in the modern world, and nobody works alone, period. So at the very end, it's a social enterprise. Second part is, and I actually spoke up 8 years ago in a 5-minute talk, I think it's absolutely important in the mathematical enterprise that all students make experiments, have observations, conjecture things, formulate theorems, and then the great thing on top of the theorems, much, much harder, is come up with definitions. And my greatest pride is that I regularly get to have my students actually define the compactness in terms of open covers, and so on. They come up with this one because this one is a need which comes up in the course. And if I time it right, it is 5-10 minutes before the end of the class, and nothing works. And what we need is uniform continuity. And the only way that it works is, OK, what do we need? OK, let's give this one a name. And that's the way we mathematicians work. So that works very nice. I strongly believe in don't do anything unless there's an established need for doing something. And Jerry Uhl had it very nice. Never prove a theorem that students haven't asked you to prove. And so I'm really happy when I get my students to ask me, demand in calculus that we prove Stokes' theorem. Usually they say, it's not going to be on the final exam, so why do we have to have a proof? They come in and they demand that, OK, sure, you asked for it. OK, we're going to do it. So this one is just my background. So for the math circles, they are fairly young in this country, but they originate basically in Bulgaria 100 years ago, and then there's a long Russian tradition, but they came later. And the way I think of it is here, the parents take their kids regularly to ballet classes, for swimming, piano lessons, soccer clubs, and so on. But the idea that it's just as natural to, in the evening, go to a math club. In Bulgaria, that's the norm. Here, what's math club? Don't do anything fun. But with lots of immigrants who came in the late 80s, early 90s, this has become a very well founded in the US. And I'm very happy that we have the National Association of Math Circuits supported by MISRI because they do a lot of work so that I don't have to explain things to the other side. So this one is the map right now at MISRI where the math circuits are all over the country. A few years ago, this area was entirely empty, and so they came in and said, let's do something in your area. And so we got started, and I met lots of great people along the way. So basically, they provide a community, workshops, conferences, training network, and they are very much in similar ways. Math circuits can be lectures. They can be lectures, but there's a lot of them are very close to the IBL parts. And what is very, very helpful is they are basically a huge clearinghouse for lesson plans of vetted problems which are guaranteed to be good and which are thought to fit into a long stream of mathematical developments. And I provide some dollar support. So instead of each of us writing to the National Science Foundation, they get a big grant, and then they dole it out to all of us. So lesson plans, they're just fine. I don't want to come up with all of them myself. In Phoenix, we are very special. I personally believe that math circuits belong into our communities. I wear the shirt for the Four Corners region on the Navajo reservation. Tatiana Shubin has spent her sabbatical out there. She got several of them started. I had promised to help get some graduate students up there, but it's just impossible to drive into that corner. Similar, we have lots of Hispanic areas. Right across the street where I live is a Yaqui community. They have real needs, but at the very end, we have one research university only, and it turned out that the best use of my colleagues is to use them for the kids in the high schools who do not have anybody else who can keep them in there. And the people who are working at Motorola and Intel, they can take care of the high school, of the other high school and middle school kids. I'm very unhappy that we are not very diverse in the classroom. There's not enough Spanish spoken in our group. So we have basically, we're working with the high end of the kids where the teachers call us up and say, I have these kids, I don't know what to do with them. Can you do something with them? And I was undergraduate chair, and I simply couldn't afford to pair them up with one-to-one with faculty and say, why don't you come all together? And this one is a group where we test it out, and if this one works, then maybe later on you have a one-to-one project on there. So we are working at fairly exciting projects, and but then we go out on math festivals, we do everything, and we do lots of tiling like this one too. So there are lots of different math circuits around, from elementary levels all the way to ours or Berkeley. Many of them prepare for AMC competitions and similar up. Some others are real recreational mathematics, and they are just fun. But I think in common we have that it's very close to the IBL activities, that the way I understand them. So my group is basically, I say, high school age students, and this one is critical. The write-ups say do not mix up middle school kids, because once you have 12-year-olds in there, all the old ones will go away. You cannot do this one. And I had seen this at some time too. Right now, there's an absolute no. You're too young, you're too short, you have different social interests. I mean, you're too smart, but it doesn't help. Do not mix them up. And what I'm trying to do is connect them with research mathematicians so that they start thinking like mathematicians think. So most of my colleagues, I like them. Some of them are standing and for a long time, there's nothing happening. I scribble something. But it's okay to be like that. And that's very often is a real change in that the students see that math problems take weeks, they take months, and so on. And I really see that like that a lot. Most of the problems are from these kind of areas. We're staying entirely away from anything calculus-like or numerical. We do not want to interfere with the AP calculus and any of those problems. And what we like to have is open-ended problems, and we're trying pretty much to stay away from any of the competition things. Basically, I don't like competition problems where you're done with a problem and it just says QED over what's the next problem. What we like to have is a problem which makes more problems, more problems, more problems, more problems. And so I have some people who are really good with that. So it doesn't always work the way because I'm trying to get lots of different mathematicians in there. So I'm inviting colleagues whom I trust, and then at least one or two outside speakers from across the country. I've been lucky. But sometimes they're great mathematicians. They connect great with the kids, but they are the ones who do what I'm doing now. They just talk and love to talk. And so sometimes I bite the bullet and just say, my kids can handle that. But generally, I want the students to do the work. And in the pictures, you're going to see that many times they are walking around. We have whiteboards all the way around. We're working on them. They make presentations to the rest of the class. They regularly interfere. However, we don't have any grades and any homework, any required homework, but we have had now some REUs, research projects for undergraduates, come out from high schoolers who then became college age and so on. So we are still selecting the problems, but very often we run into things where the questions go a different way, and we don't have to go anywhere because after a while, it turns out that this one is a much more interesting way than this one, and the students are the ones who are asking. This one causes me trouble at the end because I'm supposed to write down lesson plans and make it for posterity so that they know what we are doing, but we don't know exactly where things go, and that's the way real life is, real math is, and I actually enjoy it very much, but at the very end, when we go back to funding organizations, say, what did you do with that? So right now, we're typing sometimes up. This one is what we did, and at least we have some notes for the future, but it's hard to fill in the details in between. So some criteria I say, I like it should be real math. We're doing a little bit recreational math and sometimes classical, historical topics, which it's good for kids to know. But most of them, we want to have them as modern as possible. And I'm really lucky to have some colleagues who are good at that. They should be accessible. So like the tiling problems, this one is induction in every book. But I do this one with 10-year-olds. The 10-year-olds get started, and it takes them a long time to figure out that 25 is not divisible by 3. And they can tile along. 16-year-olds can tile, and tiling doesn't work. And I say, you should have known this one at age 7. But then at the very end, a nice one. This one is one of my favorite ones, the 5x5 board. And they can't tile it. And I pull the table over and then put the rock in there, and I tile it. And then your turn. And there it works, there it doesn't work. And I say, oh, you cheated. You put the rock somewhere else. No. And so why do some of them work? Why do they not work? But it's always the questions have to come from the students. I'm not the one who is the one who's supposed to ask them. And yeah, orthogonal to the high school curricula and long lines of inquiry. They are the real nice ones, which I'm proud of. And that's mostly due to Herr Kirster, a colleague of mine. So just a few examples of what our schedule looks like. We always get somebody from the outside. I can't read them. We're doing some fancy things which are from the last 20, 30 years, but try to bring it down to middle school or high school level. And that one is always a real exciting thing. And I think it's good for every mathematician to be able to think about how do we sell our stuff so that regular people can do it. And high schoolers are a lot smarter than people in Congress. But we have to be doing better. We should be able to explain to the New York Times and Congress what we are doing. One step is let's bring our research down to the level where high schoolers are. And so we learned from this one, getting some people out. I learned a lot of discrete math, which I didn't know. There are lots of people in the NAMC which supply things. This one turned out to be a real nice thing. I didn't know what sorting networks are. I have a few examples there, yeah, it helps to sell some topics when you have something connected to that. So let's do this one. So sorting networks are basically hard-coded things where we want to sort different. Just think of sorting some numbers, but usually what you would do is you look up, we should switch these two, we should switch these two, we should switch these two, and you're doing this one online depending on what your situation is. But the interesting thing for the electrical engineers is to actually hard code them so that you compare these two, you compare these two, you compare these two, and you have that architecture decided beforehand, not depending on what you see who should switch the position. And that turns out to be leading to lots of interesting problems. There's interesting things to do. Then you can say, okay, I have some algorithm which works, and then mine is better. And once it's better, then we have people competing. Then we ask, can you do an even better one? Now we have kids challenging each other. Who gets the best one? And then the optimal strategy, that's then world-class research. Good, so that one comes in later on. And having credible people in there who say, this one is real work. I mean, we're not getting to that level, but at least this one is what real mathematicians are doing. And so 3 weeks after we had the session on, there was an Abel Prize awarded to Similarity. So he basically started some of this one. So in the write-up, you find this one, and you're going in your class and say, this one is not from 200, 300 years ago, but this one is the beginning where real math is, and the kids are really excited about that and say, we can do this one too. This one came up a few years ago. I had a retired high school teacher, Carol Edwards, is very well known. She does a fantastic work with the bubbles, and I said, we're gonna put this one together. It was a famous paper by some undergraduates who proved the double bubble conjecture, and having the paper and saying undergraduates can actually discover things. Okay, of course I'm cheating. I'm not doing differential geometry with them, but we're getting in the right direction, and there are lots of symmetry arguments which are of the right kind, and we're starting with hands-on things. We're observing. Carol is really good to put bubbles inside each other, and she can make amazing structures with them, and they are way, way harder than the double bubbles, and the double bubble was just proven in 2002. So. Good example. This one is the tiling. This is from one of our math festivals. You see these ones are little kids. They are immediately in there. But once something goes wrong, it is immediately leads into college-level questions, go three-dimensional, and it becomes a very, very hard packing problem. And so it's a nice line where I can take this one. If I go to a math festival, and I don't know if I get 8-year-olds or 18-year-olds, this one is always a very safe way of doing it. And I had my daughter who made all of these tiles for me, and she loved the splatter paint. The other ones are the sticks in there. These ones work really well for dominoes. So they're a little bit more abstract, of course, with pencil and paper. At the very end, we only want to place one tile, and the rest is induction. But that's for the older ones. I had one 14-year-old come up with the triangles, and with the triangles, he placed one tile and said, do I have to do the rest? That kid, 14 years old, understood that induction takes care of everything. Okay, and so one tile is everything. You don't have to do anything else. Hall's theorem is a very important theorem in discrete mathematics. It's solved in many, many different ways. So in this case, Kirsten is here. We are actually sorting up sets and sequences and try to code one with the other one and staple them together. At the very end, the kids came up with some way where we run into dead ends, go a little bit back, and eventually some sort of greedy algorithm does the job. And the next week, we actually came to a proof in there. And again, 2-3 weeks later, there's a Nobel Prize out there which says stable marriage, college admission, and so on. So we're trying to connect things. They are not just fun, cute problems, but they go all the way to the end. I should be close to the end. This one was a safe start with billiards on a rectangular board. As long as you go by 45 degrees, anybody can do it. Put it into a polygon, it becomes much nicer. Put it into on a Riemannian manifolds, it's hard research, and that's what I can say something to it, and I'm practicing this one. Yeah, festivals come along with this way, and parting comments in here. yeah, I think the students change the style, the way they work with mathematics. I think that's the biggest impact that we have on the kids. I think of it as a teaching experiment. We go in when we are not quite sure how to do Hart's theorem. They can work with those smart kids. Nothing goes wrong. We don't have anything where we have to get to. If it works well, do it in the classroom. Otherwise, make it a little bit shorter. And yeah, I think this one is my last slide. I think, yeah, that was it. Good.
Paul Zorn. From your pictures, it looks as though you have boys and girls participating more or less, from the pictures, more or less evenly. Is that the case?
No way. The first,
Say more, please.
The first student who came in was a South Phoenix African-American female. She came twice. A few times we were down to 1:10, a ratio that is very dangerous because once you're at 1, when she is gone, so it's very, very hard. Phoenix is huge. We're trying to get people to go along the light rail, but they are underage. Very few of them have a driver's license, and so I get people who are from the privileged suburbs in there. Many of them are boys, and I'm very, very happy for every lady that comes in. And in the worst case, I get 2 of my freshmen and balance the room. I mean, just do anything that makes. I've had very, very few Hispanic speakers. Right now I have 2.
Nog, closer. We started a math circle with that Dolciani math enrichment grant for the last 3 years, and this was the last year of that grant. And we had, the teachers to accompany the students because they are, they're below 18 and I don't think they have driver's license or anything. So did you have any chance like the teachers to participate? Like we had this year I asked the teacher, a couple of teachers to give a talk and all, and one of them talked about the stable marriage problem. So.
No, I have most of them 1 or 2s coming from this school, from that school, from that school. Right now I have 1 teacher who regularly sits in. I have regular requests for teacher circles. I just said, I don't have the resources, there's nothing. And in terms of the funding, we think of this one mainly like giving a seminar, colloquium talk. We do this one for free and then have a few dollars to invite some other people in. I don't want to have the hassle of charging fees. At the very end, this one is not only sustainable in this format, and I hope that others will start their own circles, but it can help. So right now we are together at 4 Corners with Misri helping out to keep Tatiana's work alive up there, basically. Yep. Thank you.